Now it's our turn to, sorry for the words, but put our balls on the table.
Remember, kids, this is not how you play hockey. It's just ugly.
I like it.
Screw you guys. I'm doing this.
You know what? I love ice cream too.
Go back to Canada, Guy Lafleur.
Game on!
Yeah, game on.
Hello and welcome in to the latest edition of the Hockey Show. Ryan Bolding here. We got JJ Jerez, my beloved co-host, coming at you live from Miami. He's down there for the Tampa series. And we got Danny Bailey behind the glass as always. JJ, how is it down there? Is it as hot as it is here?
It is hot. It is humid. It is beautiful. The city is vibrant. I love Miami, but let me tell you something. Being a Denver fan and watching both the Avalanche and the Nuggets down here has been a little bit embarrassing, Ryan. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, I guess we could blame you for going on vacation early for the end of the series. But before we get into that, I want to talk Stanley Cup odds for a little bit of matinee money, even though we don't have any games going on. So without even knowing the odds, I don't know if you've looked, but without even knowing, JJ, Danny, who do you think is going to win the Stanley Cup?
I mean, I got to stick with my Knights pick. I've been on the Knights since the season started. We knew that the Avalanche and the Knights were the two best teams in the league this year, so I got to stick with them. I kind of had a feeling that Vegas series was going to pan out the way it did. So yeah, I'm sticking with the Knights. I think they're the best fit team. They're just built the right way, and they play a playoff style hockey that's tough to beat. I know Tampa Bay is looking pretty sharp, but yeah, these semifinals kind of boring in my opinion. What do you think, Ryan?
Danny, what's your pick before we get into it?
Yeah, after I saw what the Golden Knights did to the Avalanche, I'm pretty sure that they're going to take it. I am rooting for the underdogs for sure, though. I'm rooting for the Canadiens, and I'm rooting for the Islanders because I like our guy Varley, who used to be here in Colorado.
Yes.
And I don't want to see a repeat in Tampa, but I don't even think they could beat Vegas if they wanted to.
You know, I'm an idiot because I picked – so for my bracket, I did all right. I picked Vegas to go to the final, so I'm close. But I picked Carolina to win the Cup, and so that was the poor choice for me. I don't know why I imagined that Tampa wouldn't come out of the playoffs from the East. It just seems ridiculous now to look back upon it. But for me...
Well, this is why, Ryan, because going into the playoffs, we weren't even sure if Kucherov and Stamkos were going to play. Suddenly they got both of them right away in game one, and I was the same way. I took Florida to win that first round series because I didn't expect either of them to, A, play, and B, be in the kind of shape that they're in. So, I mean, those two guys really were the X factor for them.
Yeah, I agree. A little bit of upset fandom around the league for some potentially curious cap circumvention for the Leafs having Kucherov on and Stamkos on LTIR for most of the season. But the odds here are, for DraftKings, who should sponsor us. I don't know why they don't, since we talk them up every episode. Habs are plus 9,000. Whoa. The Islanders are plus 600, Bolts are plus 175, and the Knights are plus 115. So everybody thinks Vegas is going to win. I thought about putting some money down on the Islanders just because, you don't want to count them down and out. But like we said, Vegas is who we thought they were.
Right, and if you remember back when the season was getting going and they just kind of announced the way they were going to do the playoff format, you and I both kind of agreed that going into this semifinal round, it's going to throw all these teams off because they haven't seen each other. They haven't played each other. They've just been playing their own little style, right? Las Vegas has been playing the Honda West style. You've got the Canadians playing what we've seen as relatively weaker Canadian style. So I think, this semifinals just, I anticipate some blowouts. I wouldn't be surprised to see, maybe Vegas win in 4 and Tampa Bay win in 5. So I don't know. I'm not holding my breath for this round here.
And we can get more into that in segment 2. But right now, let's talk about the Avs. Let's break it down. Let's get into this postmortem. JJ, was this season a failure?
I'm going to go ahead and say no. I know a lot of people out there, the game 6, I would say, wasn't disappointing as we've seen elimination games in the past, right? The game against Dallas last year, the game against San Jose 2 years ago, those hurt. Those stung. As Avs fans, that really was tough to see. With this series, I know it was technically the second round, but I think in a traditional season setting, this is probably the Western Conference final, right? So I think we don't need to look too much into the fact that it was a second round. Just like we're saying, this third round is going to be weaker than the second round was. So I wouldn't say it's a failure because they got beat by a good team and a better team. I mean, yeah, I think going into the season and knowing that they were the favorites, I guess, right? That was the quote. I think that kind of gets to your head at times. And was it a failure? I'd rather not have this Avs team win their first cup with an asterisk on it, right? And that's kind of what I've been saying. This is a weird season, a weird Stanley Cup. It's almost more of an exhibition cup than the legitimate thing. So just because of that, I'm going to chalk it up as, it was a weird season. They didn't get it done. Their window is so wide open, though, and that's no secret to anybody. We don't need to panic here. I think it's fine losing this season.
Curiously, do you give Tampa's last Stanley Cup an asterisk?
I do, and I did.
What about one of Chicago's 3?
The one with the shortened season you're referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's fair to put because what was it? It was only 52 games that season. So, yeah, I put asterisks on all of those as well. Just at least the shortened season, they still kind of had the schedule. You're playing all the teams in the league. And that's why we kind of just need to throw this President's Trophy in the trash. Like, it's cool that they had the most points, or we were even tied, and they won it by tiebreaker. But, I mean, we've said it before. You only play 25% of the league. This wasn't a normal season. So, I wish they had the COVID Cup that I always talked about last season. I wish they recycled it, still kept it around, and handed it out this season. But, of course, that never existed.
So, it's interesting. Teams that win the President's Trophy almost never go on to win the Stanley Cup. People
True.
used to believe that it was a curse. The last team to do it, I believe, was the 2013 Chicago Blackhawks, which was an asterisk cup. But I think if this season has taught me anything, it's that maybe considering shortened seasons in this capacity as somewhat disqualifying isn't fair, because I think what any team to come out of the rigorous schedule of the bubble, I think is a major accomplishment to come out on top. And I think that any team that can win the Stanley Cup in a season like this, where teams are playing practically every other day, just at a breakneck pace at the end of the season, there's no discounting the fact that aspect of this season is much harder than normal, right? I agree with you that the teams, they only played a quarter of the league all season long, so we didn't get that interdivision play, but I think that there's still something to be said about teams coming through what was just a hellacious pace to this season, healthy and competitive. Like, that's impressive. Maybe not 2013. Maybe it's not the same circumstances. And like I said, you can discount that these teams, the Avs, I think the Avs were a little bit of a poser team in that they played, like we had talked about previously, 3 of the worst teams in the NHL 8 times.
Right, and we also talked about how going into a season and you're the odds favorite, typically you're not going to win that. So, and what you're saying there, I mean, all the more reason to, give the respect to the Tampa Bay Lightning, because in 2 of the hardest seasons we've ever seen, they're playing more hockey than anybody. And, of course, they're still standing when I don't think any of the other 3 teams that are still standing right now went very far in the bubble. So think about how much hockey they've been playing and how taxing it's been for them this year. But with that, I wanted to kind of look at Nathan MacKinnon, right? I mean, I think I was pretty impressed after the loss, his demeanor and his attitude. It was a little less negative than I expected, a little less angry.
Oh, man.
And I wasn't sure if, sure, he had a little bit of attitude to him, but less than I was expecting is what I'm saying. And I don't know, is that part of, we saw how this season was extra taxing on him. Maybe that's partly him just saying, good, I kind of am tired of this season anyway. I'm over it. I don't even care that we lost it that much. Or is it more of him just simply maturing? Is he turning into that Sidney Crosby, as his mentor? Is he slowly evolving to be a little bit more like him mentally?
First, I do think this season was a failure. When you're the Cup favorite, you're picked to go. When you win the President's Trophy, when you hardly lose a game, when you don't lose 4 games in a row all season until the playoffs, I think that equals a failure. Second, we must have been watching 2 different post-game press conferences, because I thought Nathan MacKinnon was the epitome of a petulant, spoiled athlete post-game. And I fully get that because the Avalanche do not do a media closeout day, local media members and national media members have to ask questions about the future right after what is the toughest loss of the season for the team, right? That sucks. Nobody wants to be in that position, and I can guarantee you the media don't want to be in that position either. To have to talk to a guy who's on the verge of tears about, is there a positive from this? What are you looking forward to next season? That kind of stuff. Nobody wants to ask it.
What's the point of that, Ryan?
What?
Why don't the Avs do that?
Yeah, because they protect the players. It's all about protecting the players, minimizing the amount of time they have in front of the camera, making it easy for them. You know, some teams go to great lengths to get their players out there, and the Avalanche aren't that. And I think it's frustrating for the media and it's frustrating for the players, but they're paid millions of dollars to stand up and take accountability and have to answer questions about how they played. That's part of the job, right? And I think everybody forgets that. They're like, oh, just leave them alone, or, you know, oh, look, MacKinnon wasn't having any of it. And you're like, that's part of your job description, is to be there and accountable and to answer those questions. So for me, I didn't think it was mature. I thought immediately of that commercial that the NHL's been rolling out where it's all those quotes of guys saying we, and they're like, you know, the NHL is a we league. It's all about the team. And Nathan MacKinnon went up there, and I know they were personal questions, but he said, it's my 9th year next year, and I haven't won beep. And that was really telling to me, because it's not we haven't won anything, it's I haven't won anything. And that to me speaks a little bit to his mindset. And I think that it's a little bit damaging, you know, and maybe that's the mindset that great athletes have to have, leaders have to have, right? But I thought he no-showed in the series, and we can get into that after the break. I think some of that, a good majority of that, is Vegas and what they were able to accomplish, you know, but this is a guy who was nominated for the Hart Trophy. This is a team that had a Hart Trophy nominee, a Vezina Trophy nominee, a Norris Trophy nominee, and, you know, they kind of rolled over.
Yeah, we had the conversation, what was it, last week, about comparing Nathan MacKinnon and Carmelo Anthony, right? And what you're saying right there, you're right. To me, it put that thought in my head, like, oh, this guy might leave someday just so he can go chase his cup. Of course, he probably wants to stay here. The Avalanche are going to do everything they can to keep him, but at the end of the day, I think he's just out for, you know, his own glory.
We're going to get more into it after the break, but right now you're listening to The Hockey Show with JJ and Ryan. Danny Bailey behind the glass. We want to hear from Avalanche fans. We want to hear from hockey fans. We're doing a postmortem. Come mourn with us live. Give us a call. Give us a text, 303-831-1340.
Right now, it's 16 minutes past the big hour. Is that not right, Mr. Scream? Great, good stuff. I think people are getting really cranked.
And just like that, we're back on The Hockey Show. Ryan Bolden here. We got JJ Remote, Danny Bailey behind the glass. JJ, before we change gears, the one last thing I want to say about MacKinnon, the clip made the rounds on the internet of Adrian Dater kind of fumbling through a question and MacKinnon wanting nothing to do with it. And everybody's giving Dater a hard time. And I wanted to come to his defense a little bit and just say, and he alluded to this too. He said he was trying to come across as relatable to MacKinnon in that moment, and I don't think it translated. But you know, this is a guy who is notoriously difficult to deal with for the media on a medium day. On his worst day, he was having none of it. He was having none of Mark Kisla, and he was having none of Adrian Dater. I just wanted to defend Adrian a little bit. What we saw was MacKinnon got frustrated, and when he gets frustrated, I mean, you get to see a different side of him, and we really got to see a bit of that, where he was upset and wanted none of it. But I don't think what Adrian asked was out of line or over the line. I don't think it was ridiculous, and I don't think he deserved the hatred, you know, from this guy being rude about it, you know?
100%. I'm with you. I even, took the time to DM Adrian Dater and kind of tell him, like, hey, I hope the backlash from this wasn't too bad. Because what people are failing to realize is in a normal setting, it's perfectly normal to let a question like that fly, right? And again, he's trying to relate. He's trying to be there and trying to get maybe a little better of an answer out of Nathan MacKinnon when it's obvious that he's having a hard time giving good, thorough, thought-out answers. So he's just trying to, hey, remember me? I'm Adrian Dater. I'm one of the guys that's been around you for a long time, and let's have a good conversation. And Nathan MacKinnon wasn't having it. But yeah, I don't think Dater deserved that backlash either.
And to be fair, I asked Mikko Rantanen, I've read about how do you talk to athletes in this moment, and I was like, Mikko, can you just describe to us how you're feeling and what the feeling is in the locker room right now, like the emotions going through your mind? And he just said, I think you know, and that was it. So, we all ask questions that don't get good answers or bad questions.
The book didn't prepare you for that one.
Yeah, no, nothing did. But I think, it was nice to have guys be accountable post-game, whether or not they were actually accountable. One guy who was there was Gabe Landeskog, and he's another guy who no-showed in the series. And while Bednar wouldn't really say, the extent of some injuries, he did say some guys were banged up. I'm wondering if you think Gabe Landeskog is one of those guys. I thought his passing was off, his timing was off. I didn't really see much from him in the physicality department like you'd like to see, but we did see him in front of the net fighting for space, trying to get those tips. So it's kind of hard to say, but I do think he was hurt.
Right. I think that's fine to speculate. And of course, it's purely speculation. But I mean, there was a couple games there in a row where he didn't even have a shot on goal. Right. And so, it makes sense that Bednar decided to switch up the lines a little bit and try to get some other chemistry going. And if that was the main reason for his lack of chemistry, then that makes even more sense. Right. And of course, Brandon Saad deserved to get some time up on that top line because he was really the only Avalanche player that brought it all playoffs long. Right. I mean,
and everything he shot went in, it felt like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said this on the podcast the other day that Nathan MacKinnon has this tendency that, he'll have a 3-point night when the Avalanche are winning 6-1, right? But when the Avalanche kind of need him most, and that's also credit to Vegas, right? Vegas was able to shut him down. They were maybe a little bit violent with him. They were holding him and slashing him, and Mark Stone really was able to put bodies on him left and right. So, credit to them as well. But when the Avalanche seem to need Nathan MacKinnon the most, that's when he grips his stick too tight and he's missing the net, and you're just desperately wanting him to show up and come do something. And that's where Gabe Landeskog tends to lend a hand, and Mikko Rantanen comes and he's the sidekick. But you need all three buzzing, and when you have one not playing his best, the other one may be hurt and not playing his best, and it's just hard to rely on that line the way they needed him.
I've been saying for a long time that this team needs to be more than a one-line team identity, and you need depth scoring, and you need to have the possibility of being dangerous if you break up MacKinnon, Landeskog, and Rantanen. And I don't think that the Avs were as successful at doing that. I know Bednar broke them up, and I thought they played a fantastic Game 5, but just like in Game 2, where they did not play a fantastic game but managed to win, Vegas managed to find a win in Game 5, and that's kind of the turning point. But I think Rantanen is absolved of responsibility here. I thought he played some exceptional hockey. He misses that backdoor tap-in in Game 5. Yeah. And, I mean, how many times did we see him score that in the regular season? But it's just, that's how it is. That's playoffs, right? Not everything goes in. One guy I think the Avalanche needed was Kadri. And he wasn't there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if he would have made the biggest difference. And I think back to when they almost got Panarin too, right? I mean, think about this team would have been with Panarin. But yeah, back to your point about the depth. That's what we were kind of told this offseason coming into the year, that this depth has really been improved, right? I mean, yeah, with Kadri, but the addition of Saad in the offseason, and then you look at the trade deadline moves too, and it kind of leave you scratching your head as to, were those really even good moves? So I'm now, in hindsight, I'm questioning a little bit the most recent moves of Joe Sakic. I know we've all been in love with what he's done in the past, and of course the Matt Duchene trade was amazing, but now I'm reaching a point where I'm questioning some of the most recent moves and kind of what direction he needs to go from here. I mean, that's kind of the tough part. Yeah, Kadri was a great addition for a while. I don't fully blame him for what happened. I mean, it was just a hockey hit, and he was trying to play hard. But yeah, did they miss him? Yeah. Would he have made that big of a difference? I'm not sure.
I think he would have, because it allows the Avs to shuffle the deck chairs a little bit, right? So I thought Tyson Jost generally had a pretty good series. I didn't even think he had that bad of a Game 6, even though he was on the ice for at least 3 goals against. But I think that Kadri allows you to move some guys around that creates another favorable matchup for you. If you look at the Marchessault, Carlson, and Smith line, I thought those guys made an impact. Marchessault scored in like every game except for game 1. Like that guy was on it. Riley Smith was having a good series. Carlson got on the board in game 6 there, but he was sniffing a lot of the time. Like that gave the Stone line and the Marchessault line, like they two powerful options, and then you didn't really have a lot of poor lines on the bottom side. Whereas the Avs, I think they could have used Kadri. I think they really missed Calvert. And then, we haven't had EJ all season, and I think that was a problem. And when we talk about, I'd like to talk about the trade deadline acquisitions, maybe, you had something perfect going, and these additions, or at least the addition of Nemeth, didn't quite pan out to what you wanted it to be. I wasn't a big fan of Nemeth before he left the Avs. The last time he was here, I didn't think he was the best. And when they traded for him, I said, at least you know where you're getting with Patrick Nemeth. And that's what we saw. He had that terrible giveaway that didn't directly result in a goal, but caused confusion enough that resulted in a goal. And I think on top of that, the team rode guys like Sam Girard too hard, and Girard kind of crumpled at the end. Like we saw at the end of game 6, he just gave up the puck on Mark Stone. Like he just didn't want to get hit anymore. He just gave it up.
I also think, and sorry to take a right turn here, but I want to talk about Philip Grubauer really fast, because it was really strange how when the Avs needed him the most, he was not playing very strong, and when the Avs were playing bad in front of him, he was crushing it, right? So like you said earlier, that game 5 and game 6, the Avalanche played really well, but for some reason, for the first time all year, we saw Philip Grubauer kind of struggle there.
Well, and game 6 just devolved into like a beer league game. Everybody was scoring. It was chaos. It was a back and forth. Random shots were going in. Tips were going in. Kolasar has that tipped shot that goes like basically rolls along the shaft of his stick and goes into the net. Who scored? Carlson or Marchessault scored that one-timer. And that one, he whiffed, basically, and it still went in perfectly right on the post. Grubauer couldn't get across. I don't blame him for a lot of the goals. I don't think that he was necessarily allowing soft goals. We saw some soft goals from Fleury, but I do think that once everyone realized he was fallible. He wasn't invincible anymore. He wasn't superhuman, and I'm not blaming him. Some people thought I was blaming him on Twitter when I said this, but once some of the bricks came out of the wall that was Grubauer, people realized he was beatable. And I think, maybe a little bit of doubt seeps into his head too, is like, I'm not stopping everything. Things are getting in, and more gets in from that. I don't know if there's a mental aspect there, but it was two Vezina nominees going at each other. And I think if we've learned anything from the 4 teams left standing, it's that quality goaltending matters. And the Islanders have Varlamov and Sorokin. You've got Vasilevsky in Tampa, and you've got none other than Carey Price, who had, just a mediocre regular season and an incredible postseason so far.
Philip Grubauer had an amazing year, right? And he was very consistent and reliable all season long. So this might sound a little bit silly, but it's like our good buddy Danny Bailey said at the beginning of the show. You still have that cheering spirit for Varlamov, right? And it just makes you think, wow, Varley's now in the semifinals while the Avalanche are at home and golfing and watching it on TV. What would have happened if Varlamov was the guy that stuck around? I know he's expensive, and I know his injury history is what it was, but I thought it was a little bit too early to give up on him. Ideally, you'd love to keep them both, but that's way too much money for goalies. But I don't understand advanced analytics all that well, but I bumped into a chart on Twitter that Philip Grubauer was the second worst goaltender in the playoffs in goals saved above expected. So, it's tough to see after such a good year, but I would have expected better out of him in those last 2 games.
And maybe that's a little bit of inflated expectation, right? The way he played the regular season, the way they dominated the St. Louis Blues. It's hard to say. I thought he was maybe a little above pedestrian. And I'm not trying to be mean there, but, they needed a couple big saves. However, I felt like generally when a team was shooting from, let's say, a medium danger area, not necessarily in the slot, not going across the ice for one-timers, when they're shooting through traffic, I felt like the Avalanche appeared to be more dangerous, and that Fleury was maybe more shaky, less conventional. He's certainly a less conventional goalie than Grubauer, but it felt like the Avalanche had a better chance of scoring through traffic and on regular shots than Vegas did. But It's about capitalizing on mistakes. I always say hockey is a game of mistakes, and Vegas did that. The Avs had 2 turnovers in Game 5 that resulted directly in tying goals. It's not really a turnover, but Graves' shot gets blocked twice, and the second one leads to a Mark Stone breakaway for a goal against. The Avs had 2 turnovers in one shift that led to a goal against in Game 6. It's capitalizing on mistakes, and Vegas is smart. They went out and made smart moves. They got, Mark Stone. They went out and got Pacioretty. They went out and got Chandler Stevenson. Like, they added an entire
Petrangelo.
They added an entire top line to their team, and that top line made a big impact.
Well, and those guys that you just named off too, they're not the sexiest names out there, right? But they're talented, they're hardworking guys, and they just fit the Vegas system perfectly and exactly what they need them to do. One last thought before we head to the break and get to Kyle Quincey. We talked about it last week, but to me, it ended up being a really pivotal moment, and that's the Pete DeBoer WWE-esque calling out of the refs, right? And I think, it worked. It worked for him, and the Vegas Golden Knights suddenly started getting less penalties throughout the series. And I really wish Jared Bednar would have even fired back a little bit on his own and said, look, to me, it feels like these referees are getting intimidated by what Pete DeBoer said the other day. You don't have to backlash too bad and say something ignorant, but I think there's a way to keep playing this chess match that maybe Bednar kind of missed.
I can't agree on that completely. I hear what you're saying. I know I saw the tweet that said Vegas got called for, X penalties before he said that, and they got called for like 7 penalties after that. But I don't know if you could watch Game 6 where there were 2 calls, 1 on each team, right? The entire game. I don't know that you could watch that and say, like, this team should have been called more and this team shouldn't have, right? Like, I noticed that the Avs had sticks on guys a lot. I watched Cale Makar trip Mark Stone wholeheartedly on an offensive chance. He didn't have the puck, but they were in the Avs zone. I watched Tyson Jost, go full early 2000, late 90s hockey style, stick on a guy's chest, ride him through the zone to slow him down. Like, there was a lot of things going on both sides, and I know maybe the refs swallowed the whistles a lot, but I think you would rather see that than have a game over called and over officiated.
Yep.
But I don't necessarily know that, Vegas was suddenly getting away with things that they shouldn't have been when it comes to that. But I do think that Pete DeBoer did a good job of coaching. I've said it multiple times that the last change was going to matter. I asked Bednar about it. He agreed. He shuffled his lines to try and get around that at home. They played a better game. But then when you're down going back into Vegas, Vegas gets to match up against you however they want. But we're going to go into the break. We've got Kyle Quincey of the Avs Alumni, former Colorado Avalanche defenseman, coming up next. So stick with us. All right. We're back on the hockey show. Ryan Bolding, JJ Jerez, remote on Skype. I wish I should have got a fat head of you and put it in the chair so I had somebody to talk to. I just have to talk to Danny now and nobody can see him.
Well, I don't want anybody to steal it like they did the Lauren Gardner cutout. So
listen, you're not that good looking. But we do have a special guest on the line now. We are joined by former Avalanche defenseman, former NHL defenseman, current Avs alumni vice president, I believe, Kyle Quincey. Kyle, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We're happy to have you on. Hopefully we're not interrupting your golf game today.
No golf game today. Just hanging out with the boys.
Nice, enjoying the weather.
Saturday. Exactly.
Kyle, before we get into some of what the Avs alumni have going on, we just have to get your thoughts on the Avalanche bowing out of the second round for the 3rd time in a row. Did you watch the series? If you're watching, what are you seeing? What did Vegas do right? What did Colorado do wrong?
Yeah, I actually watched every game. We actually flew to Vegas for Game 3. So I was in person there. I just feel like as a whole, Vegas bought in 20 guys. They were dedicated and almost seemed like they wanted to win more. And in hockey, you need everybody buying in, and sad enough, I don't think we had 20 guys that wanted to win as bad as their 20 guys.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like, like you said, Vegas bought in. I thought they did a lot more things right than the Avalanche necessarily did. I don't think the Avalanche kind of rolled over, but when you're looking at, the top talent, maybe those guys expected it to go a little easier than Vegas did. It seemed like Vegas was really willing to work for it.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the top guys per se, but I think it's all the way through the lineup. We had a lot of soft turnovers and soft defensive plays, and everything that we had to create, and we earned. They gave nothing for free, where we had a couple bad turnovers in some key moments, and in the playoffs, those will come back and get you, and it did.
Kyle, I mean, it sounds like an urgency problem, right? I guess just to keep it short and simple, do you put that more on the players, or do you think the coaching staff has some responsibility there kind of getting the players up and ready for this?
Well, I think if Joe and Bednar could put on their gear and go win a battle, and they would. But it's 100% on the players. They can't. They're professionals. You can't. Mm-hmm. There's not any, big speeches or, it's not on leadership. It's guys. Every man has to beat the other man across from him, and the Avs consistently didn't do that.
Kyle, I want to know just your thoughts on answering media questions after, tough losses, or the one loss, the last loss of the season, the toughest loss. Like, what's going through your mind? What are you thinking? I know it's not an ideal situation for either media or player, but, we saw maybe a little pushback from MacKinnon. I'm just curious, from a player's point of view, what that's like.
Well, these guys are human beings, so like they're devastated, and it's all come crashing down, and 5 minutes later they have to answer hard questions. But at the end of the day, everyone's a professional, and they know the guy asking the questions, the media, newspaper, everybody has a job to do, and part of that job, is for us is to answer those questions and give the media the answers that they're asking. So it's not the best part of the job, but it's part of the job, and I think everyone understands that. And in the moment, sometimes you forget it, but it's part of it.
Looking ahead at the semifinal round here, not the most exciting of matchups. Do you predict either of the underdogs coming out of this? And if not, who do you have winning it all?
Yeah, I grew up a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, guys, so I can never root for the Montreal Canadiens.
That's fair.
So I got Vegas. I really love how Vegas is built and their team, and watching them so closely. I'm really cheering for them to get it done this year.
I feel like it's really hard to sleep on Tampa, and I did that with the Carolina series. But I'm kind of with you, Kyle. Looking at the way that Vegas is playing, I feel like, it doesn't matter if there's Vasilevsky or Kucherov or Braden Point or Steven Stamkos. Like, the way that Vegas is built and performing as a unit just seems kind of unstoppable.
Yeah, and Tampa also, though, they're rolling right now. They're very good. I would not want to play them. So I think it's Vegas-Tampa in the finals, and in my mind, it's a coin flip, and that's going to be very, very good hockey. I'm excited to watch that.
So, Kyle, we want to dive into a little bit about what you guys at the Avs Alumni have coming up next. So, first thing up is a softball tournament. Who in the Alumni are the best softball, baseball players, and can you just tell us what this experience is going to be like for people who are interested?
Well, we're going to find out. These guys are so competitive, and they have so much pride from playing, obviously being professional athletes. But I got phone calls. Guys are going to batting cages, and they're warming up for the tournament, which is great. But I had this idea from Detroit days. Joey Kosher put on a great softball tournament, raised a lot of money for charity. I got hooked up with the One Goat Foundation, which is provides bridge funding for first responders in need. So that's where the money's going. We got Ball Corp as a title sponsor, and pushing their initiative for, no plastic, no glass. It's an all aluminum event. So we're doing good there. And we're going to have the after party at Breckenridge Brewery down the street. yeah, we're excited. It's gonna be a great event.
And that's going to be June 18th at Redstone Park, which should be a good time. And then in August, you've got a youth skills camp coming up with some awesome names and opportunities for squirts and peewees.
Yeah, like growing up in Toronto, I never had there was no opportunity to go skate and meet like Toronto Maple Leaf players or ex-guys. So, I just wanted to get the guys accessible, and we're going to raise a lot of money on that event. It's a week-long, an hour, 2 hours a day clinic, and they're going to get one-on-one, not one-on-one, but, you have David Clarkson, John Mitchell, Kenny Klee, myself, a chance to learn from the guys that have done it. And it's, I'm pretty excited for that. And we're raising good money for, we're going to put the money back into the community with donating gear and ice time I'm trying to help hockey be more affordable to more people.
Which is great. Obviously hockey's an expensive sport when it comes to gear and renting ice time and travel and all of those things. Kyle, have you guys ever considered, I want to know this as a mediocre beer league player, an adult clinic? Nobody ever talks about the adults.
It's called a fantasy camp. It's a fantasy camp. Yeah. So I was supposed to do the LA Kings fantasy camp, and the day COVID started, mid-March last year. But we're super excited about doing that in Denver. A fantasy camp. It's not we're not maybe teaching it too much, but we're having a lot of fun. You're hearing all the stories. We'll get a suite or two for a game, so we can go to a game and have a little hockey tournament during the day. That's definitely in the works, and we're excited to get that going.
When you're coaching these kids, when we all grow up, suddenly we reach an age in our life and we're like, whoa, I just said something. I sound exactly like my father. When you're teaching these kids, do you ever channel some of your old coaches and you're like, wow, I never thought I would say that. I remember this coach telling me this 100 times, and now here I am relaying it and being that guy.
Yeah, no, 100%. Babcock has his own language almost, and he's nailed it into us. System-wise. So some of those words I repeat, and I'm like, yeah, I can't believe I'm saying that, but it's exactly what you said. And it's pretty amazing to, have a kid for an hour and watch him get better. It's very rewarding being the teacher also.
I want to know who is going to be the hardest on the kids, and if you do a fantasy camp, who's going to be the hardest on the adults? Like, I would love to just have Mitchie yelling at me as I try to win face-offs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we got some passionate guys. One of our guys that's at all our events is Derek Armstrong, who has been actually was my coach during the Cutthroat days, and it was my neighbor in the dressing room in LA. So he's the most passionate guy of all people I've ever met in hockey. So he doesn't turn it off. So he'll keep you honest on and off the ice all the time. So he's my guy to keep guys in line.
I may have heard a rumor that in the weekly get-together skates that Armstrong's a part of, he's still concerned about plus or minus.
Oh, he's concerned. Oh yeah, for sure. He knows exactly who's plus and minus, and so he needs to have those stats so he can keep chirping in the dressing room.
It's important.
Kyle, before we let you go, I want to bring it back to hockey in the NHL. As a former defenseman yourself, we just heard this past week the Norris candidates, Adam Fox, Victor Hedman, Cale Makar. In your opinion, is the Norris graded correctly? Is it truly the best defenseman, or do you feel like it gets too heavily weighted on points?
Well, my opinion is he's got to be the full package. So I'm not really sure how they weight it, but they have to be a good defender. Like Victor Hedman, in my mind, is a perfect example of the full package. He does it all. Obviously, he's in every single situation, not just power play guy, but last minute of the game and we're up a goal, he needs to be out there also. So that's what I'm saying with defense and offense. He's not just one-sided. So he's a perfect example of a Norris in my mind.
Kyle, last one for me, and we'll let you get out of here. what are your other thoughts on some of the other NHL awards? Do you have any surefire locks picks? I mean, MacKinnon's nominated for Hart, and we've got Grubauer for Vezina. What are you looking at? What are you seeing?
Just watching Gruby in the playoffs, I think he was just so solid. He's had such a good year. I think he's got to get a very, very long look at that award. Mm-hmm. And definitely with MacKinnon, just how dominant he was this year. But he's got some stiff competition there. So just to be in that conversation, having, Kale and Gruby and Nate in those three categories just shows how great this core is for this Avalanche team. It's amazing.
Well, thanks a lot, Kyle. Thanks for joining us, taking some time out on your Saturday. You heard it from here that we've got an alumni softball tournament coming up next Friday, I believe, the 18th in Highlands Ranch, and then we've got some youth clinics in August.
Right on, guys. Yeah, and the Avs will be there doing their street hockey deal for all the kids on the 18th in the parking lot. So come out and check that out for sure.
Will we have any post-game IPA available?
Oh, yeah. There's a keg. There'll be a keg there ready to rock.
Here we go.
Now we're coming. Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks for having me, guys.
That was Kyle
Right on.
Quincey.
I like that point he made, Ryan.
Yeah.
I mean, having all those guys being in the awards and being finalists, that's a stinger, right? Especially this week, having all that be announced on the week that the Avalanche bow out.
Well, and we'll get into more of the NHL awards in the next segment. But for me personally, I think it's kind of the stinger is that Jared Bednar doesn't get any Jack Adams love. He's not a finalist. I do think that the finalists who are there are very deserving. Joel Quenneville. I think Rod Brindamore has done great things. Dean Evanson taking Minnesota to like their best points record ever. Is pretty impressive with that lineup. But I think Jared Bednar did some great things with a pretty good lineup too.
Yeah, I'm with that.
We'll be right back on The Hockey Show. Again, one last time, we want to hear from you, 303-831-1340. We're back on The Hockey Show. Before we get into some rapid-fire NHL award stuff, JJ, I put out a tweet asking for fans' comments, and we got all of one from JMaddie16 on Twitter. It's Maddie16J on Twitter.
He likes us. He really likes us.
Obviously, the window is still open, but this felt like our best shot in the window. What are some things to be optimistic about as we get cheaper and lose veterans? Also, what are the chances we pull a Tampa Bay and fly under the cap with EJ Calvert on LTIR next season? What do you think?
I guess to address the first part of that question, I think there's a lot to be positive about in the Colorado Eagles, right? I mean, we saw the debates of Bowen Byram over Patrick Nemeth. Bowen Byram needs to get a look. Well, in the future, that's not going to be an issue. That's not even going to be a hesitation from Jared Bednar. Bowen Byram's going to be getting heavy minutes. And then, of course, you got guys like Sampo Ranta and who's the
New
other
Hook?
guy? No, not New Hook. Burrows, right? Something. What's that guy's name?
Kiefer Bellows?
No.
I don't know who you're talking about.
I'll look it up.
This is awkward.
That's usually how the mixed bag goes, though. We're always awkward on it.
I think, the thing to be optimistic about is that this is the best team the Avalanche have had and the best depth the Avalanche have had in a decade, at least, maybe two.
And they're only going to get better, right? I mean, these guys are going to get more seasoned, and you're going to keep getting these calluses from the losses, and you're going to learn how to handle it better. And, it's still the core of this team is still very young.
I think the rite of passage is calluses on your heart as a sports fan, right? You just become hardened to the losses. I've seen a lot of people. Oh yeah, I've heard of him. I've seen a lot of people who are loyalists, diehard Avs fans who are taking this one maybe the hardest. And I'm not sure that that's right, and I'm not sure that that's wrong. But I will say that I don't know that the Avalanche are going to get better than they were this year. And I'm going to write about this later this week, but I think, Joe Sakic said at his trade deadline press conference that this lineup will not be the same next year, that they're going to have to make changes to account for money. People are owed money, Landeskog, Grubauer. You're going to have to pay Cale Makar, things like that. This roster may not be better than it was this year, but it's still going to be good, and the window's still there. But this is a heartbreaker. But speaking of heart, let's talk about the NHL awards.
I like that.
How do you like that one?
That was good.
We got Austin Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Connor McDavid of the Edmonton Oilers, and Nathan MacKinnon of the Colorado Avalanche for Hart. Does anyone other than McDavid get a shot at this?
No, it's a hands-down decision here, but there's one person I think that should get to vote on this, and that person only, and that's Tyson Barrie. He's played with all three of these guys, right? He got to play with MacKinnon, then spent a year with Matthews, and now McDavid. And McDavid's a huge reason that Tyson Barrie was the leader in points for a defenseman this year. So, if anybody knows, it's Tyson Barrie. He's a benefactor of McDavid's greatness right now.
When McDavid hit over 100 points in how many games? It was just a ridiculous pace. And Tyson Barrie actually said in a media interview that, we're just feeding McDavid the puck because we're all moving in the direction to get him to 100 points. So I thought that was very telling about the mindset about how everybody makes that accomplishment their own accomplishment as well. And I also think that it means nobody else is going to win. We've talked about it. McDavid is the engine of that team. The Leafs have a much better lineup, and the Avalanche have a much better lineup, which I think makes McDavid the most valuable player.
Just how far off are Edmonton right now, right? I mean, getting swept by Winnipeg, who got swept by Montreal, who nobody even thinks is any good. So
who beat the Leafs. Yeah, I mean, of the three, MacKinnon went the furthest, but, he performed about as well as McDavid did in this last series. Next up is Jack Adams. We got Rod Brindamore, Dean Evanson, and Joel Quenneville. Obviously, Carolina has been performing very well under Brindamore for the last couple of years. Dean Evanson comes in and does miraculous things with a team that many people counted out in Minnesota. And then Joel Quenneville takes Florida, further than they've been in a long time.
And that's kind of the trend you're seeing here, right? So maybe it's like we've missed Jared Bednar's window to win this because he hasn't brought a team from nothing to something. They've just been something, and they've been a good team. And I think Nathan MacKinnon kind of hurts Jared Bednar there when he gets the nods for these.
Well, and the team was nothing his first year. Let's not
right.
forget
that would have been
he
the
took
year
over with a
won.
week's notice. But I think also maybe when it comes to the Avalanche, maybe when it comes to the situation overall, Patrick Waugh winning in a year where the team overperformed their talent and then basically being trash after that for the rest of his tenure may have scared some people off. Norris, Makar, Fox, or Hedman?
I think Hedman. He's just hands down the best all-around defenseman. Like I kind of asked Kyle Quincey, I feel like the Adam Fox thing is a little bit more because of how many points he scored. Yeah, he's good at defense, but he also scored a lot of points, so I think that's kind of clouding people's judgment, and people are trying to lean towards Adam Fox, but I think Hedman's the hands-down winner here.
This one's tough for me because I don't think Hedman had a great season, but I think he is a solid overall all-around guy. I think Makar puts up a lot of points, and people think of him as more of an offensive defenseman, but I'm always impressed with his defensive ability. But it seems like a lot of people think Adam Fox is going to win. I think it's going to come down to Makar or Fox. Adam Fox had a heck of a year with a Rangers team that, kind of underperformed and had their coach fired. I think it speaks to his ability that if the coach leaves, but he's nominated for an award, he must have been doing something right. Masterton, we got Matt Dumba, Patrick Marleau, and Oscar Lindblom.
Another easy decision, right? This should be unanimous for Oscar Lindblom.
Yeah, I think everybody's deserving for Marleau. It's dedication to the game. It's, ability. It's not all about overcoming something horrific, but it tends to lean that way. And what Lindblom did, beating cancer and coming back to play hockey is never not going to be impressive. For the Selke, we've got Barkov, Bergeron, and Mark Stone.
Let's just give it to Bergeron because he always gets it, right? Kind of the same concept that you said with Hedman. He's just always that guy. He's always in the mix, and why not?
Yeah, I think they should just call it the Bergeron Trophy, but I think
reality,
Mark Stone
deserves it.
I think Mark Stone deserves it, and
100%.
you just watch the little things. I challenge everybody to watch the little things he does in the next round. Lady Bing, we got Austin Matthews, Jacob Slavin, and Spurgeon.
Who cares? Slavin, I'll go with
who's
Slavin.
not going to win it is Nathan MacKinnon, and he shouldn't have won it last time. King Clancy Award, we got Gabriel, Renee, and Subban. That one's for charitable contributions to the community. I have no idea. Let's
I'll
skip
go with
that one.
Subban.
Yeah, fine. Calder, Kaprizov, right? Over Robertson or Nedeljkovic. Djokovic. And Vezina, Fleury, Grubauer, Vasilevsky.
You wish Grubauer would get the nod, but you got to think it's going to Vasilevsky.
Probably, or Fleury, yeah. I'm with you. Well, that was it for the hockey show. Thanks for joining us. JJ Jerez in Miami, Ryan Bolding here in Denver,
Never
Danny
coming
Bailey
back.
always behind the glass.